Hi, my name's Jamie Eason. I'm the official female spokesmodel of Bodybuilding.com. I'm also an Oxygen columnist, and you may have seen me on a couple of magazine covers before. I'm actually aiming to get my 50th one this year, which will be a pretty big milestone for me. I'd like to share with you today how I maintained my physique, how I got to where I am, and share with you some of my nutrition, my training, and my supplementation. Probably the most commonly asked question I get is how I stay in shape year-round. I think a lot of women do the competition scene, and that's where I started. And I had a great time with it. It actually taught me to be disciplined and how to kind of stick with the program. That was good for helping me stay focused, learn what it took, give me the confidence that I knew what it took. But then I had to sort of make that work for everyday life. I couldn't do this really hardcore, then really easy, then really hardcore. For one, it was brutal on my body. I could see the yo-yo. And the other thing is, it's just not, it's not conducive to what my goals were, which is I wanted to do the modeling and I wanted to be able to work full-time instead of just on occasion when I was in shape. I haven't competed in years, and really there is a noticeable difference in my physique. I've actually lost some size. Not a considerable amount. It's funny, like the tighter that you get and the more full you get, people think you're so much bigger, but I think I weighed 96 pounds then and I weigh 106 pounds now. It's just the muscle to body fat ratio is a little different. And magazines actually prefer a slightly more attainable look. I always wanted to be consistent, so I just found a place where my body was comfortable and I could keep it there all the time and it wouldn't fight me. But all that had to do with making sure that I got the training and the eating down pat. So I had to learn to balance calories, to lift heavier for the most part than what most women would think, and also to eat enough. And people are always on this perpetual cycle of cardio, but for me, I've learned to balance the training and the diet so that I can minimize the cardio, which I hate. Traveling is brutal. That's probably one of my biggest challenges with my whole lifestyle. I just plan ahead. I plan a lot. I've figured out little sort of routines that I can do on the road, a lot of plyometrics, a lot of running, which I hate running, but I've just kind of learned that I just have to do what's available. The hardest part of traveling is just you don't know where you're going to end up. You don't know if they'll have a fridge. You don't know if there's a gym nearby. So it's just a lot of prep and planning. Now that I've told you a little bit more about me and about how I stay in shape 365 days a year, now I want to get a little more specific and share with you what exactly I do for my training, my nutrition, and my supplementation. But first, let's tackle my methods on training. Well, I'm limited on time typically, so I like to do what I call training for my weaknesses. Everybody seems to have one body part that sort of excels naturally better than everything else, and you have that lagging body part. Mine's my whole lower body, so I always make sure and try to hit that at least twice a week. And everything else, if I can only get in the gym once, I'll even combine everything. But if you have the luxury of time, I always say you can never train your back and your shoulders too much, and of course my lower body. So my arms, everything else seems to respond fairly easily, so I can get those in my push and pull motions and not really have to specifically focus on those. I always recommend to people when they start out to kind of do what I did, which is I worked out 6 days a week with 1 day off. For a beginner, that may seem like a whole lot, but I was really committed and I had my heart set on exactly what I wanted to look like, which was a really lean, toned physique. I tried really hard to focus on one body group a day, one major muscle group a day, and I felt like that allowed me to put all the food energy and all the energy I had into growing that one particular muscle. And so if I could do that throughout the week, every muscle got the attention that it deserved, and so as long as I was keeping up my sleeping, my healthy eating, stuff like that, over time you just start growing. It really only took me probably 6 to 8 months to drastically transform from about 28% body fat, which is where I started, to, I believe I stepped on stage for the first time at 9%. So I was a little too lean. I wouldn't even recommend that because I actually looked what's called stringy, which is your muscles don't get as full. I overtrain. Exercise is a paradox. It's good for you and it's bad for you because it breaks down muscle. It releases free radicals in your body. It does some harm, so that's why we use the supplements we use. That's why we eat right. That's why we sleep, so we can allow the body time to recover. I'm what I would probably call a hard gainer because I'm so little. Being really petite, it's hard for me to gain any real quality size. I would probably have to eat crazy, and I already keep my calories pretty high. So I tend to lift heavier, and I tend to lift in a lower rep range. So like my lower body, I know that I want to grow it, so I'll lift pretty heavy. I'll do a lot of drop sets, I'll do a lot of supersetting, but I'll do heavier weight and just less reps and then straight into another exercise just to kind of hit it in a different way. When there's times that I want to get in shape for something, whether it's the lake, a wedding, you know, go hang out on the water, or a photo shoot, I'll really kick up the intensity. I start doing higher reps and sets. I'll do a lot of plyometrics. I never do long extended periods of cardio, ever. I feel like it really kind of eats away the muscle on my body type. So I always recommend people do like interval training, like maybe instead of resting in between a set, you have a jump rope and you do some, you know, revolutions with your jump rope, or maybe you're doing plyometrics or something like that. But I also like sprints. I'll just go outside and I'll sprint lampposts, sprint one, walk one. Because my travel schedule is so hectic, I don't really plan a rest day. I let things happen, and I just make sure I don't miss out on any of the fun things and take a complete day off to go do something, you know, cool and exciting, so I have a life outside of this, and then just get right back on my program. Now that I've shared with you some of my methods on training, you can get my full program down below, and now let's move on to nutrition. So the first thing I recommend is make sure you're keeping a food log so that you can make sure you're not under-eating or overeating, and sort of find where those calories, you know, could be. You can eat it on a higher end sometimes when you're training harder, and a lower end when you're training lower. I tell pretty much everybody that I really, really strongly believe in meal spacing, like timing your meals, and even in intervals throughout the day. Some people do that every 2 hours, every 3 hours, every 4 hours. I personally do about every 3 hours. I just find that the reason they do this really is so that you can have sustained energy throughout the day. You don't have peaks and valleys, and you're not going long periods without eating. And so it keeps your blood sugar stable, it keeps your mind alert, and basically it just keeps your body fed and energized. So you won't binge, you won't feel like, you know, you're having these horrible, awful cravings. Well, if you eat on a schedule, your body trusts it's going to get fed, and so over time, you quit, you know, craving. You quit. Your taste for things change. It starts releasing fat when you actually exercise because it trusts it's going to get fed, so it's not hoarding that food for energy. If I wake up, you know, pretty early, I'll always get in 6 meals, but I tell most women to at least aim for about 5. I think that's realistic. So every 3 hours, you know, pretty much all of us are awake that long. I actually keep my protein intake pretty consistent throughout. I find what I do more is manipulate carbs when I want to grow or whenever I want to lean out. So if I want to grow, I usually add a little bit more carbs, especially after training. If you take in carbs then, it acts like a broom to sort of sweep the protein up into the muscles, which is when you need it the most. That's why some people do the little tricks with simple sugars, and women love fruit. I don't really eat much fruit, but if I'm going to eat it, that would be a good time to eat it because the fructose in the fruit is what's going to allow the protein to be swept up into the muscle. One of my favorite hobbies is just being in the kitchen. It's like de-stressing, and I sort of just put my total focus in that. I crank up music and I just kind of do my thing in the kitchen, but necessity is the mother of invention. You know, I had to figure it out, and I could not eat boiled chicken and broccoli. You know, I have a sweet tooth. I have a massive sweet tooth, so I figured there's got to be a way to, you know, make something taste good. So I started experimenting with baby food. I mean, I looked at the jars, and they're one of the few foods on the shelf that's prepackaged, convenient. I could just open it and dump it in, and it doesn't have a ton of preservatives because it's for a baby. So I thought, okay, I'm not eating that straight out of the jar. So I just started, you know, mixing it and playing with it, and I came up with several, you know, protein bar variations that I love, and I pack them with me everywhere. They're a staple in my diet all the time. Some of my my go-to, I guess, staple meals I've shared with Bodybuilding.com, so you can find them on the site. I've got my lemon protein bars, my chocolate protein bars, my carrot protein bars. I also do turkey zucchini burgers. I do meatloaf muffins. I think that's really convenient. It, you know, most lean protein is pretty dry, but if you cook it in a muffin tin, those vegetables and everything that's in the meatloaf will really keep more moisture and retain the moisture. And they're conveniently packaged in like a perfect portion size. So again, everything is just really making a ton and having a ton of good options ready on hand. Most of it freezes well. So, and I'm going to add more to the site. I've got my cinnamon swirl protein bread, which is a big hit. It's good on its own, but you can slice it and make French toast out of it too, so it's pretty good. I hate hearing the word snacks. I believe in meals all throughout the day. You know, it can be, I guess you can call it a snack if you wanted to call it a snack, but really when it's clean, unprocessed kind of foods, you can eat a substantial amount throughout the day and still stay in that calorie range. Well, I don't believe in cheat meals because I think they're a slippery slope. Like, for me personally, if I eat a little bit, I suddenly develop this taste for it, like a craving for it. And I've got some pretty good willpower, but not always. And so I just realized that there's too many instances in life where it's out of your control anyway, whether you're traveling, you've got a wedding to go to, a birthday, and you just want to be in the moment and you want to enjoy it with your friends and the people around you. Now that I've shared with you some of my tips and techniques for nutrition, you can check out my meal plan down below. And now let's move on to supplementation. Well, supplements to me are exactly that. They're supplementation. One of my favorite things about Bodybuilding.com is even though we sell supplements, or we practice what we preach, we all eat healthy and exercise first. And those are actually in addition to your workout plan. I've seen it a million times. Somebody will go into a store or online and they buy, $300 worth of supplements, but they're not even eating right or working out right. And we want you to be successful. So this is why we share these tips with you so that you'll figure it all out and buy the supplements that you actually need. I'm in my 30s, and so I've noticed, like, for me especially, recovery is harder, so supplements will help with that. Convenience, I travel a lot, so protein powders are good for that. There's just certain things that definitely fit what I would need as a woman, whether it's for hormonal health, whether it's for weight training, depending on what your personal needs are going to depend on what supplements you might choose. Well, I would always recommend a multivitamin for everybody. When you start any sort of working out or clean eating, especially when you start clean eating, you tend to go a little extreme at first because you really want to be committed, you're all in and everything, and sometimes you cut out a lot of food groups. And when you do that, you're missing out on some nutrition. So the vitamins, they'll fill in those gaps. And when you're weight training too, you want to always make sure you have added calcium because it's weight-bearing activity on your bones can be pretty hard. Another one that I always recommend is a protein powder. I think it's always great for convenience. There's a little window of time after you work out when your muscles are most receptive to taking in the protein and actually using the protein. And then the other one I would recommend is branched chain amino acids. It's not something probably women would think of all the time, but again, my goal specifically is to make sure that I look lean and toned. And branched chain amino acids for me are like my insurance. They're the building blocks of protein, and of course I'm taking my protein powder and I'm eating protein and stuff like that. So I just make sure I take them in, I drink them before, during, and after I train. They're just in my water. So those are my favorites. Those are the ones I always take. A long time ago when I first started this, I really didn't understand the value of supplementation. I really thought, well, if I'm eating really good quality food all the time, I'm getting everything I possibly need. Your body makes glutamine, it makes, all these things naturally. But I'm an anxious person by nature. I stress out quite a bit. Also, when I'm buying it, or even when I'm cooking it, I don't know how I'm changing it. I don't know where it started out, what farm it was on, and how it got to me and stuff like that. So there's all these unknown factors that make me feel a lot better whenever I know if I'm getting a good quality supplement, that I'm filling in all the gaps in that possible, any holes in my nutrition. And I've been able to tell. Supplements have been invaluable in my training. When you train as often and as hard as a real athlete should, or if that's what your real goal is, they're a necessity. Now that you know my approach to supplementation, you can check out my recommended supplementation program below. If you'd like to ask me any questions, you can find me on BodySpace. My username is Jamie Eason. And for more information like this, you should check out Bodybuilding.com.